Nathan, what month is it?
April.
And the month right before April?
March.
And in March, there's a few important things that happen with regards to sales figures. We just got all the March sales numbers in, which means we finally know how well certain companies like Ford, like GM are doing in their year-to-date sales so far. So in this video, we're going to cover some of the hottest and coldest cars of 2019 so far. We've gathered a whole bunch of sales numbers from our friends over at Good Car, Bad Car, and we're going to go down brand by brand, tell you how well each brand is selling in terms of overall sales volume, and then we're going to tell you each of the hottest and coldest selling cars from those brands.
Now we're going to start from the lowest and we're going to go all the way up to number one.
Right, number one being the best selling car brand or vehicle brand of 2019 so far. So I say we hop right into it and start with, well, there's 33 brands on the list. So number 33, as it were, is Fiat.
No surprise.
Not doing so hot. So far in 2019, Fiat has sold 2,214 units in total. Their best model was the Fiat 500. They sold 778 of those so far this year. And their worst model is the Fiat 500L, of which they only sold 168 in the first 3 months of this year.
Yeah, and their year-to-date from 2018 to 2019, they're down 44.8%.
So Fiat is selling not super hot so far this year here in the United States. Why do you think these models are doing well or not so well?
Okay, real simple. The 500 is their best car, pretty much, other than perhaps the 124. The 500 is a solid little runabout. There's nothing special about it, but unfortunately, the numbers are so low because Fiat hasn't bothered to really update this vehicle. The 500 Abarth is part of this sales number. It's a really good little car, but unfortunately, once again, hasn't been updated in forever. The 500L is their worst car, by far.
Just doesn't look very good.
No, it doesn't. And also, it's a vehicle that has some mechanical issues, it has some internal issues, it has external issues, and frankly speaking, the 500X is a better vehicle and should have replaced it.
Okay, let's move on. The next, well, at this point, worst selling brand so far this year in the US is Genesis. So far in 2019, they've sold 4,203 cars. Of those, the best selling model is the recently released Genesis G70, and the worst selling model is a very large, luxurious sedan, the Genesis G90. Year over year, they're down 3.7% from the same time last year. You and I do love the Genesis G70.
Absolutely, one of my favorite cars of the year. And it's cool because there's actually a couple of varieties of that vehicle that you can get.
Yeah.
And I'm thrilled that they're actually selling more of them. Now bear in mind, for those of you who do not know, Genesis is part of Hyundai. And that means that there's a much larger company there that has deep pockets that's able to finance them.
Yeah.
They are in the process right now of going through an entirely different type of dealership network, and that's part of the reason why they are having some sales problems.
Yeah, so far I think there's just very few dealerships open for Genesis, but frankly it's just hard to buy them because the dealership network isn't that big. Next up, Nathan, let's move on to Alfa Romeo. They've sold 4,286 models so far this year. 2,210 of those were the Stelvio, and their worst selling model is the 4C, of which they've sold 41.
That's it.
41 4Cs have been sold. Year over year, they're down 26% compared to 2018.
Now, a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, with the 4C, they discontinued the hardtop, so they're only selling the Spider version now.
That's true.
And the 4C was a brilliant driver, a lot of fun to drive. Andre and I had a chance to drive one of those in San Francisco. I've driven a couple of them now, including the convertible. I can tell you, it's like a baby Ferrari. However, it's not the most comfortable car to get into or out of, and once you're in it, if you're a big person, not very comfortable, not very practical, and those are unfortunate things. Also, they don't have a manual version available, so you can only get the one with the paddle shifters available. Now with the Stelvio, that's a different story. It's a brilliant crossover, and it is their best-selling vehicle, probably because it is a crossover, and it's a fantastic choice for those of you who want something different. I think the only thing that's really affecting Alfa Romeo right now is lack of a good reputation, because let's face it, they have an Italian brand name that is related to Fiat, and as such,
people don't think it's reliable.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
All right, Mini is up next. So far this year, they've sold, well, about twice as many cars as Alfa Romeo, 8,905 sales this year to date. The best-selling model there is the Countryman. 3,196 Countrymans have been sold. And the worst-selling model is the Clubman, 839 Clubmans. Year over year, Mini is down right now, 15.5%.
Yeah, Mini is suffering from what a lot of other people are dealing with, which is Frankly, people don't like small cars as much as they used to. And it's a real shame. I really like Mini Cooper altogether. Everything Mini sells, I tend to like in one way or another.
Yeah.
And that's because they're small, they're sporty.
They're quirky, they're fun.
And that's the word, fun. And with that, the Countryman is the closest thing they have to a crossover SUV. Real shame that they're not selling more of those, but the good news for Mini is that there are some new products coming out, according to Mini, in the very near future. Hopefully that'll help.
Perhaps it will, but let's keep moving on to Jaguar. So far this year, Jaguar has sold 10,222 units. The best-selling model, no surprise here, it's a crossover, the F-Pace. Sold 4,540 F-Paces. The worst-selling model is the XJ, just 409 XJs sold. But Jaguar is actually up on the year so far. So compared to 2018, at the same point, they're 30.7% better than they were last year.
And this is a real quick one. The reason why they're up is because of the F-Pace.
Yeah, it's crossovers.
Yeah, the crossover, and there are other crossovers in the near future that you will be seeing, and that is basically just so Jaguar can increase their sales because they know you guys are going to be buying crossovers.
Hey, speaking of the F-Pace, our dear friend Andre is about to take off for Saint-Tropez in France. He's going to be driving the Jaguar F-Pace SVR, the super fast one. So stay tuned for a review of that in the near future.
Yeah, you go, Andre.
All right, let's keep moving on. The next brand on our list is Porsche. Porsche so far this year has sold 15,024 units. Best-selling Porsche, no surprise, once again, it's the Cayenne, their large SUV. They've sold 5,559 Cayennes. The worst-selling model is the 718. So far, they've sold 665 718s. Year over year from 2018, they're down just 1.9%. So nothing too bad going on with Porsche.
No, and I mean, it's not much of a surprise. I have a feeling that if you look at that, the Cayenne, if you look at the Macan, if you look at those vehicles and you look at the sales numbers, you're going to see an uptick because people love Porsche crossovers.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is they're actually pretty decent to drive. So good for them on that. And the rumor is that Porsche is considering even more crossovers in their near future.
Yeah, well, actually, Porsche just announced that at the 2019 New York International Auto Show, they're going to be unveiling what they call the Cayenne Coupe, which is basically like a sloping roofline version of the Cayenne. Andre is going to be at the New York Auto Show as well. Stay tuned to TFL Car, and we'll be sure to post a video with more information on the Cayenne Coupe when that comes out next week, basically. Should we keep going?
Yep.
All right, next on the list is a brand near and dear to my heart, Volvo. So far this year, they've sold 20,083 units. The best seller, gosh, this is quite the trend we have going on here. It's their large crossover, the XC90. They've sold 7,389 XC90s. The worst seller is the V60, of which they've sold 26 Volvo V60s, and there's a good reason for that, actually. The V60 just got refreshed,
yes,
and the new ones are probably just hitting dealerships right around this time. So it's not super surprising to me that they've only sold 26 of them so far.
But good for them. Their sales are up 8.6%.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, and a lot of that does have to do with the crossovers. Once again,
absolutely,
it's all about crossovers, and Volvo's proving it. And their XC90, frankly, is a fantastic vehicle.
Awesome.
You can get it as a plug-in hybrid. It's one of the few vehicles you can get in its class that has that option. So let's move on to Lincoln because they got a ton of them.
Yeah, so far this year, Lincoln has sold 24,975 units. The best seller, no surprises here, is the Navigator. 4,469 Navigators sold so far this year. The worst seller is the MKT. They've only sold 1,242 of those, but the brand on the whole is up 10.7% compared to the same time last year.
Now, the Navigator is one of the main reasons why that number is up. And the Navigator is a fantastic vehicle with a phenomenal power plant that comes directly out of the Ford Raptor, which has a special EcoBoost engine.
Yep, the high
Almost
output.
Everything that Lincoln is building right now has a version of an EcoBoost engine in it. And as such, turbocharging. The MKT should have been killed years ago. It's frankly on this list one of the most disappointing vehicles there. I'm glad that it's not doing so well, so to be honest with you. Let's move on.
Let's keep going. Next up is Land Rover. So far this year, they have sold 25,028 units. The best-selling model from the Land Rover family is the Range Rover Sport, 6,469 units. And the worst seller, this one's really surprising me, Nathan, is the Range Rover Evoque. They've only sold 2,052. Overall, the Land Rover brand is actually up 3.2% from the same time in 2018.
Keep in mind, the Range Rover Evoque is an old vehicle by today's standards, and they have a brand new one that Roman just got a chance to drive in Greece. Recently. And so those numbers should be changing by next year. It should be a fairly good seller. It used to be one of the best-selling vehicles. The Range Rover Sport, we've driven them before. They're quite good.
Yeah.
And good for them for selling as many as they have. The fact that their numbers are up just proves that crossovers and SUVs are on the rise.
Next up is a brand that I'm sure is going to raise a lot of eyebrows, Nathan. It's Tesla. So far this year, Tesla has sold 30,600 units. Of those, the best seller was the Model 3. 22,425 of those sold so far this year. We bought one just recently. Check out the 53 series. And the worst seller, actually the Model S. So their larger sedan so far, they've just sold 3,950 Model S's. But Tesla is actually the most improved brand of 2019 so far. They're up 32% on the year.
That is really impressive. Now, technically speaking, their oldest vehicle is the Roadster, but that's no longer for sale.
Right.
But the Model S, well, that came after. And the Model S has been around for a while, and that's part of the reason why it's not as popular as some of the other vehicles. And frankly speaking, the Model 3 is really showing its maturity as being a much easier vehicle to own and a much less expensive vehicle to own.
Yeah, the cost to entry is much lower, and it's just more approachable for a wider audience. I am curious to see what happens once the Model Y goes on sale. I think we should keep moving, Nathan, and next up is Chrysler, which is funny. So far this year, they've sold 31,591 vehicles. They only have two models. The best-selling model is the Pacifica, their minivan. They sold 23,274 Pacificas, and the worst seller is their other model, the Chrysler 300, of which they've sold 8,290. It's been a rough year for Chrysler. They're down 31.7% from the same time last year.
Now, bear in mind, they got rid of the Chrysler 200, so they've really cut a third out of their fleet, and as such, they have very little to offer. Now, these numbers aren't bad in terms of the individual vehicles, especially considering how long you've had the 300 around.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to new product, the only thing they really have that's new is the Pacifica minivan, and it's a great minivan.
Yeah.
They need new product, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Nathan. Let's keep going. Infiniti is next. So far on the year, Infiniti has sold 34,315 units. The best seller is the QX60, 12,830 of those so far in 2019. The worst seller is the Q60, 1,304 sold this year. And year over year, Infiniti is also struggling a little bit, down 16.1% compared to the same time in 2018.
It's an interesting thing because the QX60, I wouldn't say it's exactly a loved vehicle by TFL's standards. Yeah. We find some issues with it. None of us are particularly happy with the CVT that it has. But the power is decent and the luxury is quite good.
Yeah. The next brand is Cadillac. So far Cadillac has sold 35,995 vehicles in 2019. The best seller of those is a crossover. It's the XT5, 13,278 sold. The worst seller is a small compact luxury sedan, 522 units sold of the Cadillac ATS. But actually Cadillac is up this year compared to last year, 0.3% over the year.
Cadillac is one of those divisions that's in need of complete and utter revision. They need a new product for almost everything. They're doing this too. This is something that many of you already know. And because of that, hopefully their sales will increase. At this point, they're kind of disappointing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think Roman put it best in a video we did last week where he just said that Cadillac kind of needs to find its identity again. And you can see that in their sales with a lot of their vehicles that are just not doing super hot so far this year.
Yeah.
Let's keep going with another luxury manufacturer, this time from the island nation of Japan. It's Acura. So far, they've sold 36,385 units this year. The best seller, no surprises, it's the RDX. They sold 14,972 RDXs. That's like half of their sales. The worst seller, also not surprising at all, it's the NSX, their supercar, frankly. On the year, Acura is up 8.9%. They're seeing a little bit of growth. But yeah, I'm not surprised that the NSX is the worst seller. I mean, it's a sports car. It's really expensive. They're just not going to sell it.
Yeah, they're limited. It's a halo car.
Yeah.
Acura is one of my favorite brands. I have no problem saying that. Sure. They build really high-quality vehicles, and amongst the vehicles that I really like, the RDX is one of them. It's a fantastic SUV. It's one of the few that you can get and upgrade it to the point to where it's very performance-oriented with a great turbocharged engine. Obviously, the NSX is amazing, but these vehicles, the NSX, vehicles like that, and you'll see this further on this list, Halo vehicles, they rarely sell very well. So that's not exactly a surprise. Let's move on to Mitsubishi.
Mitsubishi is actually very surprising for me here, Nathan. So far this year, they've sold 42,067 units, which is not bad.
No.
Their best seller is the Outlander. They sold 14,381 Outlanders. And their worst seller is the Mirage, of which they sold 6,242. But here's the important number. From the same time in 2018, they're actually up 17.6%. So pretty significant growth for Mitsubishi. What do you think they're doing right?
Well, they're doing a lot of things right. Recently, when Nissan bailed them out of some serious trouble, they injected them with a little bit of cash, which they desperately needed, but also gave them a little bit more freedom. Now they don't have to build certain types of cars. In fact, they really don't have to build any cars. The Mirage is their last car. That's the last vehicle they build that is considered a car. Considering what the Mirage is, which is a hatchback that is literally one of the least expensive you can buy, that's not a bad number at all. Now, a lot of these do go to fleet sales and whatnot, but nonetheless, that is still a vehicle number that I could be relatively proud of. But the Outlander, frankly, remember, they have a plug-in hybrid. They're also one of the few vehicles that have that option with a third row seat.
Yeah.
So it is a proper SUV, has all-wheel drive and a plug-in hybrid option. Good for them for actually being innovative. Hopefully, they'll improve next year as well.
All right, let's keep moving. Next up is Audi. So far this year, Audi has sold 48,115 units. The best seller, you guys probably all guess it, it's the Q5. 15,228 Q5s sold so far this year. The worst seller, a lot like with Acura, it's their Halo car. It's the R8. So far they've sold just 149. It's a slight decrease in sales for Audi from the same time last year. They're down 3.4%, but I don't think that's anything to be too concerned about.
Well, no, because they have the e-tron coming, and they have a bunch of new vehicles coming. And because of that, with this new portfolio they're about to open up, it's going to increase their car sales. It's pretty inevitable. The Q5 absolutely makes sense, and frankly, it competes with the RDX from Acura.
Totally.
And the R8 does compete against the NSX. So, yes, very similar type of setup there. And I think the sales numbers will increase shortly. So let's move on to Buick.
Buick is next, right? 51,867 units sold so far this year. The best seller for Buick is the Encore, 24,606 units. The worst seller is the Cascada, 746 sold so far this year. And Buick is down a little bit this year, down 8.7% compared to the same time in 2018.
You know, Buick has an interesting story right now. They're going through some consumer uncertainty, and that's because Opel in Europe is no longer part of General Motors in terms of what they're building. So in the near future, what is Buick going to be? What cars are they going to sell? People are wondering, and there aren't a lot of answers out there. General Motors, once again, not very good at communicating. Fortunately, Encore is a great car. Their convertible, not so much.
Yeah, not so much. The next brand, though, is definitely sure of what they're going to be, and that is Lexus, because they've been the same thing for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
A reliable, luxurious brand. So far this year, they've sold 66,791 units. The RX is the best seller, 23,529 units sold, and the GS is the worst seller, just 955 of those sold. But overall, Lexus is up a little bit. They're up 4%. Compared to the same time in 2018.
Now, this is a repeating theme. If you look back years and years and years, the RX has been one of their best-selling vehicles, so this is no surprise.
Yeah.
They build a really good crossover. The GS, well, frankly, that's also not much of a surprise.
Yeah.
It doesn't sell very well. It's a fantastic car.
Next up is Mazda. 70,833 units sold so far this year. The best seller, once again, it's a crossover, the CX-5. 37,496 CX-5s running around on the road in 2019. And the worst seller is the Miata, the Mx-5. They've sold 1,530 of those. Kind of a rough year for Mazda, though. They're down 15.7% compared to the same time last year.
They are, but they have new product that's recently come out. They have an updated Mazda 3, all new Mazda 3.
Brand new Mazda 3.
And they also, which is one of their good sellers too, and it comes in just under the CX-5, which is recently updated as well.
Yeah.
Those numbers should reflect in the next count that we get. However, I can say this, the Mazda MX-5, no big surprise that it's a slow seller, because it always has been. But they have sold over 1 million of these cars, and considering the fact that it's a little tiny two-person convertible,
1,500 is actually not bad.
It's not a bad number at all.
Bad.
Let's move on.
Next up is BMW Bayerischen Motorwerk. So far this year, they've sold 73,888 units. The best seller for BMW, no surprise, once again, the X3, 14,568 X3s sold. And the worst seller, again, no surprises, it's the i8, their hybrid electric halo car. BMW is ever so slightly up on the year. They're actually up 0.1% compared to the same time last year, but not a remarkable change for BMW. What do you think?
BMW Lexus, strong and steady, and that's pretty much what they've got going on right now.
Yeah.
Now, they do have new vehicles coming in shortly, including
The X7.
the X7.
The new 8 Series.
Uh-huh.
And the new 3 Series.
That is correct.
And the new Z4.
That's
They have
right.
a whole bunch of stuff coming out.
Right, and that should increase sales. So we should be seeing some bumps in the near future for their sales numbers.
I would think so. Okay, let's keep going with another German manufacturer, direct competitor to BMW. Mercedes-Benz, 78,878 units sold so far this year. Actually, a very tight race between BMW and Mercedes. Mercedes' best seller is the GLC, not a surprise, 15,366 units so far. And Mercedes' worst seller is, we're kind of cheating here, but it's Smart. Smart is owned by Mercedes, and we count that as their worst selling vehicle. Only 231 Smart cars sold so far this year. Overall, Mercedes is down a little bit, though, down 9.2% compared to last year. But we might see another similar thing to BMW because Mercedes just unveiled a whole bunch of new models, right? The new GLC is on the way, as well as a new CLS class, the new A-Class sedan, which is their entry-level model. I expect that'll bring a lot of new people to the Mercedes brand. So maybe they can turn things around in the rest of 2019.
Let's move on to Volkswagen.
Another German once again,
What's
Volkswagen.
the surprise?
No surprises here. 85,872 units sold so far this year. The best seller, it's the Tiguan, 26,533 new Tiguans. And the worst seller, I guess it's not surprising, but it's a little bit disappointing, is the Golf R. They've sold just 144 new Golf Rs this year. 2.3% increase compared to the same time in 2018. But dude, I'm kind of stuck on this Golf R number. I mean, they just introduced the Spectrum color option. You can get it in one of 40 different colors. How are people not buying these?
I know, it's crazy, right? You could tell someone here is a Golf fan.
I don't know what you're talking
The
about.
good news is for Volkswagen is that their portfolio is about to expand in a massive way.
The ID series.
A lot of new electric cars coming for them as well. Let's move on to a company that's top seller isn't a crossover, and that is Dodge.
Yeah, this is actually kind of interesting. So far this year, Dodge has sold 110,517 units, and the best seller is a minivan. It's the Grand Caravan.
Yes, they still build it.
They still build the Grand Caravan, and they still sell 35,000 of them in 3 months, I guess.
Yeah.
35,440 to be exact. The worst seller is the Challenger, which kind of makes sense. 13,431 Challengers sold so far in 2019. Overall, they're down 5.5% compared to the same time in 2018. What do you think? Why the minivan?
Yeah, it's interesting. You would have thought it would have been the Durango, right?
Yeah,
that's what I thought, too.
That's what I would have thought.
Well, that Grand Caravan, it is a very popular vehicle for fleets to buy, and they actually have a version of it that's more of a cargo vanish type thing, and it's very inexpensive, and when people need it, they have the Pentastar engine as part of the package, and frankly speaking, it's just a decent little van that is inexpensive to buy. They are another component of FCA that desperately needs a new portfolio and new vehicles, and hopefully they'll be getting those soon.
Okay, next up is GMC, and so far this year they've sold 125,577 vehicles. The best-selling car they have is their Acadia crossover, of which they've sold 31,200 units, and the worst seller is the Yukon, of which they've sold just 14,947 units. Year over year, GMC is down slightly as a brand, down 4.4%. compared to the same time last year.
Now, the good news is, first of all, the Acadia is pretty much all new, and it's a much lighter vehicle, it's a much more efficient vehicle, it's a much more capable vehicle in terms of daily driving. On the other hand, the Yukon is frankly a little long in the tooth, and we have heard that they are updating that vehicle big time, possibly an independent rear suspension in the future, new frame, new engine, new interior,
body,
new body. Yeah, pretty much a new vehicle. So that's one of the reasons why, well, frankly speaking, the sales are pretty low on that one. All right, now let's move on to Kia.
So far this year, Kia has sold 136,596 models. The best seller is the Soul. I think that makes a lot of sense. Actually, 25,553 sold. That's funny. The worst seller, also not surprising at all, is the Kia K900. 102 K900 sold so far this year.
Didn't you go on that trip?
I did go on that trip. Overall, this year, Kia is actually up 7.6% compared to the same time frame in 2018. Yeah, so the K900 is essentially like the Korean S-Class.
Yeah.
But it's a lot cheaper, and it's actually a really good car. It's based on the Stinger's platform. It has an awesome engine under the hood. You can get the twin-turbo V6. It's a great luxury sedan, but not a lot of people are buying
Except
luxury
LeBron.
sedans. Well, except LeBron.
LeBron
has
fine.
a K900.
Yeah, he's got one of those. Speaking of Korean car companies, Hyundai is next.
Hyundai, a sister company to Kia. So far this year, they've sold 144,515 units. The best seller for Hyundai is the Santa Fe, 28,683 Santa Fe's. The worst seller is the Nexo, which is the hydrogen-powered vehicle. That's unsurprising, right? Because you can really only own a hydrogen-powered vehicle in like California.
Yeah.
Because there's just no infrastructure.
It's a tiny
for
market.
It. Yeah. Year-over-year growth, 2.1% so far for Hyundai. So both of the Korean brands are actually doing a little bit better than they were at the same time last year.
Yeah, they are. And frankly speaking, good on them because they're pushing really hard. Their R&D, all the money they put into their development really does show.
Yeah.
They're very competitive and good for them on that. Let's move on to Jeep, which is a very important customer right now because we're about to go to Easter Jeep Safari and drive some of their prototypes.
Absolutely. So far this year, Jeep has sold 212,804 vehicles. Of those, the best seller makes perfect sense. The Wrangler, 49,978 Wranglers sold already this year. The worst seller for Jeep is the Renegade, but they still sold a lot, 18,218 units. Year over year, they're actually down a little bit, down 6.7% compared to the same time last year. But I think that number might start to go up really quickly since the Gladiator is about to hit dealerships next month.
Not only that, but they've just revised the Renegade, which has an all-new engine and some new updates to it, which were things people really wanted. And with that, and then yes, with the Gladiator and the Renegade doing what it's doing, their sales, I almost guarantee you, are going to go skyrocketing.
Let's keep going with Nissan, another Japanese manufacturer. 331,536 units sold so far this year. The best seller is the Rogue, 93,814 Rogues. Keep in mind, though, guys, that includes the Rogue Sport. Global markets, the Rogue Sport is called the Qashqai, but here they put the numbers together. The worst seller, not surprising at all, is the GTR. They sold just 93 GTRs so far this year. And overall, Nissan is suffering a little bit, down 11.6%. And I think, Nathan, this is an issue of Nissan not really moving the needle all that much.
Oh, it's more than that. Nissan's had a really rough year. They've had some serious issues with their leadership. They've had some serious issues with product. Their overall growth has been diminished because of bad leadership when it comes to truck sales and PR and everything else. Frankly speaking, Nissan's having a rough year. Good news for them is that the Rogue is doing very well.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're able to stay on top. Right now, they're actually one of the best-selling crossovers, period. Good for them on that. The GTR, it's been around forever. And
it's
frankly,
old, it's a supercar.
Yeah.
It's just not a recipe for success in terms of sales volume. Still an impressive car, though.
they swear they're going to update it or replace it, so we'll see what happens in the future. But Nissan desperately needs a winner.
Next up is Honda, another Japanese manufacturer, just edging out Nissan in terms of total sales so far, 333,402 units on the year. The best seller, no surprises, it's a crossover, it's the CR-V. 87,840 CR-Vs sold this year, so a little bit less than the Rogue, actually.
Right.
But their worst seller also makes a lot of sense. It's the Honda Clarity, which is kind of like a Prius competitor, right? They've sold 3,968 Clarities, and sales for Honda year over year are up a little bit, just 1.4%.
There's a hydrogen version of the Clarity,
Yes.
and that is one of Roman's favorite cars because Roman was dropped on his head as a child. Let's move on to Chevrolet.
And Chevy's having some issues, perhaps. So far this year, they've sold 452,401 vehicles, which is a lot of vehicles, don't get me wrong. The best seller in terms of cars is the Equinox. 88,500 Equinoxes sold so far this year. Their worst seller is the Volt, which is on its way out anyways. So far, they've sold 2,520. Obviously, guys, this number on the year so far does include pickup truck sales.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. But overall, Chevy's actually down 8% year to year.
Yeah, now General Motors is really having a tough time, and primarily, well, it has to do with leadership. They're having a lot of problems with selling cars, building cars. Chevy Volt's been discontinued. I don't think that was a great idea. And they closed the plant that it was built at, which I think was a terrible idea. But more importantly, they're having a hard time with their public relations reaching out to buyers. And that's being, well, shown by the fact that they're down 8%. Hopefully they'll pull it back together and be able to do something next year.
We shall see, but let's move on. We're almost to the bottom, Nathan. Number 2, actually, is Toyota. So far this year, Toyota's sold 476,925 units. The best seller, no surprises, it's the RAV4. 83,820 RAV4 sold, and I suspect that'll actually continue to grow quite a bit because the new RAV4 has been in dealerships for a little bit now.
Yeah, and then also the hybrid is now hitting some dealerships that it wasn't in before.
Their worst seller is the Mirai, which is, again, a hydrogen vehicle. They really only sell them in California, and there's not much infrastructure for them. Just 347 Mirais sold so far this year. But overall, Toyota's down a little bit, 7.4% down compared to the same time last year. What do you think is causing the slump in sales?
Well, part of it has to do with the fact that they are doing a bit of a switch with their inventory. So they're moving to more crossovers and less sedans. Sedans are not selling right now. I mean, granted, they're selling. They're just not selling a lot. So they have a new Camry that came out a couple years ago.
New Corolla just came out.
And you went to that trip for the new Corolla.
It's actually a really good little car.
It is a really good little car. And those numbers are still going to be impressive, but they're not going to be quite what they were before. Now, once Toyota does introduce a new Tundra, once they introduce a revised 4Runner, then their numbers should start going up again. I suspect that they're doing a few changes right now, and trucks will definitely be part of that.
Yeah, so do keep in mind also this Toyota figure includes the Tundra and the Tacoma.
Right.
Last but not least, number 1 is, well, you have to know at this point, it's Ford. So far this year, Ford has sold 565,274 vehicles. Keep in mind, a lot of those are the F-Series, the F-150, or the heavy-duty, or what Ford calls the super-duty versions.
A huge majority.
The best-selling car from Ford is the Escape. It's their crossover, no surprises, 60,702 Escapes. And the worst seller, also no surprises, is the Ford GT. They've sold 84 of them so far this year. Overall, Ford is down about 3% compared to the same time last year. The Escape makes perfect sense, right?
The Ford Escape has recently been completely revised. It's an all-new vehicle. I had an opportunity to see it at a press release event, but I didn't get to drive it. But I can say it's larger in all the right ways, and it should be more powerful and more user-friendly.
And they have 2 hybrids coming.
Indeed they do.
And the Ford GT, well, you basically have to know someone with a lot of money and also have a lot of money, and it's just impossible to even buy one because they're so expensive.
Yeah, you actually have to know somebody at Ford to have a special handshake and you know, send them Easter baskets.
You had to be born on the 6th Sunday in 1978 or something like that. It's a halo car.
Yeah, and God forbid you try to sell one of these.
We're going to have to wait until, what is it? What's the next month? June?
Yeah.
To hear from Ford and Chevrolet or GM again.
Remember, these guys are quarterly, and so it's difficult to keep track of what they're doing every month, unlike all the other automakers.
But that's why it's so important that we do this update at the 1 quarter mark in the year, because we now get to see the whole picture in terms of sales for 2019. That does it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Michael.
And Nathan.
And come back to TFLcar.com for the latest news, views, real-world reviews, and in 3 months, we'll come back with another 2nd quarter update on sales to see how the car market is doing.
Ciao.